All right, lots of dramatic developments around the world. How is Canada responding to both this issue of the lone gunmen and the lone wolves, and what about international leaders? What are they doing now vis-a-vis the Taliban threat? So lots of questions now. Joining me now from Toronto, Lois Brown is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development. John McCallum is the Liberal immigration critic, and in Vancouver, Peter Julian is the NDP House Leader. Lois Brown, let me start with you. The government's reaction, obviously, to this horrific attack by the Pakistani Taliban. What does this tell us about how dangerous they are, not only in Pakistan, but obviously across the border in Afghanistan?
Well, Evan, first of all, the Government of Canada condemns this brutal and horrific act. And our hearts and our prayers are with the people of Pakistan right now, the victims and their families, and we send our deepest condolences. And likewise to the people in Australia who have had such a horrific act there as well. So we need to stand with the people of Pakistan, stand with the people of Australia, and support them through these difficulties.
Will Canada be taking any specific action vis-a-vis, let me just focus on the Pakistan situation, and I'll talk to the Acting High Commissioner in a minute, but will, Canada spent 10 years fighting in Afghanistan against the Taliban. Clearly this is the Pakistani Taliban, very closely related to the Afghan Taliban. What will Canada do at all? Does this reassess what Canada has to do to take on the Taliban?
Well, Evan, we've been working in Pakistan for quite some time. In fact, one of the greatest successes that we've had there is our debt for education transfer. We have forgiven the debt to Pakistan of some $132 million and seen that money transferred over into education programs, strengthening their education programs, strengthening the teacher training programs to ensure that there is education. And we look at the enormous success that we had in Afghanistan getting kids into school. There were millions of children who did get into school opportunities, and half of those are girls. So we're seeing changes. It's not an easy change. We need to keep working there and seeing that happen.
John McCallum, what's your sense of what the response to this ought to be?
Well, first of all, I do echo what Lois says in terms of our hearts going out to the bereaved people in both Pakistan and Australia. I did speak to the Consul General of Pakistan today to express condolences. And when I asked him what we could do, he said, well, have us in our prayers and help us to fight terrorism. And I think the Prime Minister of Pakistan expressed it best when he said these terrorists were the enemies of Pakistan, the enemies of Islam, and the enemies of humanity. But I thought what the Consul General said was good advice.
I guess the question is, do you think Canada ought to take an enhanced role or re-engage in the fight against the Taliban?
Well, look, we've been there since 2001 under both Liberal and Conservative governments. I think we've expended a lot in terms of lives, in terms of money, and I think we've done a huge amount of work there. Right. I think the Western powers are now out of there militarily, but I think through diplomatic and other means we are certainly providing support for the people of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Let me bring in Peter Julian. There will be questions when the Taliban are this active, doing such horrific acts. Pakistan is engaged in a very serious fight in Waziristan and Afghanistan. What does this tell you about the ideology that's taken root among this group of Taliban and perhaps around the world?
Well, what kind of sick, twisted group of men come into a school and kill 130 children? It is, I think, for all Canadians, just a moment of profound sadness, and it's sadness that goes around the world. I don't think you're going to see any disagreement from the three of us on your panel today, Evan. We all agree, as Canadians do, that this is an absolutely reprehensible act of cruelty and brutality. Now, as far as what Canada can do, we would certainly support any initiative that provides increased funding for education in Pakistan. This is a challenge that the Taliban has put down, and Canada can respond by doing what we've always done best, which is supporting educational systems, supporting education right through. And so these are the kinds of of things that we can do to, as we think and as our hope of prayers are with the people of Pakistan. Now, as far as Sydney is concerned, there is another tragedy, but I think we're seeing some hope in some of the initiatives that some countries have taken, such as Denmark, to de-radicalize people that may have mental health issues or drug addiction issues, but then get it drawn into violence. And when we see these points of light in Denmark and in other countries, I think in Canada we do need to look at programs that many in the Muslim community and the Somali community have been calling for, supports so that anybody that is vulnerable because of mental health issues or drug addiction issues or whatever can get support so that we pull them away from any potential radicalization.
Lois Brown, will the government, is it close or is it considering a national de-radicalization program as some other countries have?
We're working on strengthening our laws in all areas, particularly when it pertains to terrorism, Evan. But Evan, could I just say before I go any further that I've had conversation with my own community in Newmarket-Aurora. I have a very large Pakistani community who have moved there, who have become very involved in our community. And I've spoken to them today, and they are a hurting people. And so I want the Pakistani people here in Canada to know that Canada stands with them, that we want to assist, and we will help them in any way to get through this situation that they find themselves in.
Real quick, if I can have a minute of all of your time, let me comment on the situation in Russia right now, because it's an economic situation that could very quickly turn a little more dangerous. The Russian ruble dropped 50% this year against the US dollar. Oil prices are falling. It very much hurt the Russians. They raised, their central bank raised the rate they almost doubled it, 10.5% to 17%. Here's what Prime Minister Harper said about that situation today.
We are all noticing the difficulties that are emerging in Russia, partly because of falling oil prices, partly because of poor governance of the economy, and also partly because of sanctions that have been imposed by us and by our allies.
Just if I can go down the line, I'll start with you, Ms. Brown. Sanctions against Russia, now the low oil prices, the Russian ruble looks like it's collapsing. Putin might be in a very dangerous corner here. Is this a sign that sanctions should be continued or eased up as that economy goes into collapse?
Well, Evan, Mr. Putin needs to get out of Ukraine and allow the sovereign territory of Ukraine to govern itself.
Oh, okay, and I appreciate that and that position. I think the international community's taken that. But given the fact, I mean, it's one thing to have the Greek economy collapse. A superpower like Russia, that could get real dangerous. So, the sanctions, you believe the sanctions should remain right now, even if that economy starts to tank?
I think it's giving Mr. Putin some pause for thought.
John McCallum?
Well, look, obviously we agree that Mr. Putin should get out of Russia, but I don't think that's the question.
Get out of Ukraine.
I think the question is that if you corner a bear, a Russian bear, or any kind of bear, then either he's going to withdraw and be intimidated and behave better, or he's going to lash out in desperation. And I don't think any of us know what Mr. Putin is going to do, so I don't think we should be happy or necessarily reassured by Russia's problems, because he could lash out of desperation. So I do not think we should reduce the sanctions, but I think we should be very wary and watchful of Russia's behavior in coming months.
All right, last word to you, Mr. Julian.
Well, there needs to be continued economic pressure, and at the same time, channels need to be open to the Russian government. The way out of this is to ensure that there is pressure so that Russia does withdraw from Ukraine, and the way to avoid the situation getting worse is to keep those diplomatic channels open as much as possible, to keep the discussions going as the pressure, the economic pressure, increases on Russia and on Mr. Putin.
Before I let you go, Peter Julian, I just got to go to you. Glenn Thibeault is going to be on this program soon, former NDP caucus chair. You're the House leader. He's decided not just to leave your party, but to jump from the federal NDP, not to the provincial NDP in Ontario, but for the provincial Liberal Party. He says he doesn't see eye to eye with your party. He was the caucus chair. Is that a comment on the leadership of Mr. Mulcair and on the direction of your party?
I think it's a comment on Mr. Thibeault, and he'll have to explain when Andrea Horwath really leads the progressive forces in the Ontario legislature, his decision. I'm saddened by it, of course. Glenn is somebody I've always gotten along with, but I think that these are the questions that really need to be put to him.
But are you concerned about, I mean, look, you've got Libby Davies not running again. Now you got Glenn Thibeault who's leaving and he's becoming a Liberal. I mean, what is it telling you? The message looks like you can't keep people there.
Every time there's a 4-year term, there are members that step down, choose not to run again, and certainly we're seeing more Conservatives. We've seen Liberals and Bloc members as well choosing either to leave their caucus or not run again. So it's something that has an impact in Sudbury, of course, but as far as our caucus is concerned, we're very determined, and we're going to continue to do the work that we're doing in Parliament, looking to unseat the Harper government in 2015.
It caught you off guard, though, fair to say?
No, I mean, I've been in politics 10 years. I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen NDP MPs leave before. I can give you a long list of names, but they won't mean anything to the public because normally when people switch parties, they don't have a long political career. I can just say that I know, having talked to our caucus members over the course of the last few hours, they just renews their determination. It doesn't change anything in the larger scheme of things, and we're really focused on the elections on October 19th, 2015.
All right, well, we'll talk to Glenn Thibeault later in the program. Lois Brown, Peter Julian, and John McCallum. Great to have all three of you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.